If you're happy, if we can move on, and just to outline from your perspective, the key issues facing maternity services in the UK at this time, and what you think is needed to make serious, long-lasting and effective change.
Yes, by the time you look at this video, you will be very familiar, no doubt, with the second Ockenden Report. And so I don't want to try and preempt that, but I can guarantee it will point out that we need to learn from our mistakes. And sadly, over the last 20 years or so, we haven't been able to do so. So we've got lots of opportunities to do so. We have internal investigations, we've got national inquiries. You'll have heard of the Morecambe Bay, the Shrewsbury and Telford, there's East Kent coming up. We are awash with people's ideas on how to improve maternity care. The fact is that those lessons are there for the asking, but what we've got to do is to implement those things, and that takes time. You know, I said to my manager in my hospital a few years ago, look, you've decided to cut the sandwiches at the CTG meeting, which we used to hold every Monday, where 40 or 50 various obstetricians, midwives, sonographers all used to attend. And he said, yes, we can't afford that anymore. So guess what? Nobody turned up. And I pointed out that if we saved one case of cerebral palsy, not just under my care, but on everybody's care in the next 20 years, say, of my career, you'll be able to pay for sandwiches for the next 1,500 years. Anyway, they thought I was being facetious, but it is true. You've got to invest in little things so that people can attend over their lunchtime meetings and learn from mistakes and things. So what else do we need to do? We need the time to learn. We need staffing. Keep going on about this, but the staffing numbers are still very poor. Midwives, particularly, and obstetricians, there's an awful lot of vacancies in both those domains. The culture, I think, is changing, but it has to shift. You'll have heard of the sort of terrible championing of natural birth for its own sake. And on the other hand, you know, people who intervene at the slightest incentive. Well, both of those got to go. We are in it together. There is no preferred mode of delivery. I think the safest one should always be the one that we will be focusing on. And so midwives, obstetricians, anaesthetists need to work really, really closely and train together, because we are in it together for the sake of mother and baby. And that has to come across all the time. There is no turf war. There should not be a turf war. We should be working for those common interests. And finally, as you mentioned, technology. Somebody has to invest in better intrapartum monitoring.
Do you think, thank you so much for that. Do you think, you mentioned that, you know, you need more midwives, obstetricians. Is there a reason why we don't have the number that we should have? Is it just a simple case of funding, or is there something more concentrated going on there?
I think it is funding. I think obstetrics has always been regarded as slightly a Cinderella subject. I used to be on the CCG, and it was very, very rarely on the agenda. So there was always time spent on the 4-hour wait in A&E and so on. So, but obstetrics never seemed to get a mention. Maternity care needs to have greater attention to it, not least for all the suffering that can occur if there is short staffing.
But I suppose when you said it's not getting a mention, I mean, that to me sounds very strange, because we know from a sort of a medical legal litigation point of view, midwifery and obstetrics amount for the largest number of claims in the United Kingdom. It really is where all of the money that goes to, because as you highlighted earlier, one case involving a baby who has suffered significant brain damage can be in the tens of millions of pounds.
Okay, I completely accept that. But the harsh truth is that the hospital doesn't actually pay. They have the insurance scheme, and they pay their insurance and somebody else pays. So actually the sting doesn't really affect them in the way it should do. And they don't, it's still short-sighted, obviously, but they don't seem to appreciate that for the tariff, say, roughly speaking, a mother to be looked after in the NHS costs about £800, something like that. And the insurance cost for these litigation things is about £400. So half the money that's supposed to go to the care of mother and baby goes in insurance. That should be the driver, but I think hospital boards haven't really seen or addressed the elephant in the room.
Thank you very much. It's quite shocking, really, isn't it, Kim?
I don't think I have words, actually. I really don't, because it's distressing to think that if things don't change, no one will ever learn, nothing will ever be any different, and we could be having this same conversation in 10 years' time.
I don't want to be gloomy about this, but I can confidently predict that we will be.
That is shocking. I mean, I have spoken to a number of professionals over the last number of years, and particularly everybody thinking about the Ockenden Report coming out. And one or two have said that they are very concerned about the safety issues in maternity services.
Cerebral palsy is the number one condition which accounts for much of the cost. And sadly, that incidence has not diminished over the years. Does that mean we're unsafe? Well, the incidence is approximately 1 in 1,000. So for the 999 whose babies are fine, they would say, well, that's great. So I think it's a very motive to start regarding the NHS as unsafe. I think that's not true, but we must strive to make it safer.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We've kind of mentioned a few times about Ockenden. For people watching that have no idea what we're talking about, obviously there is a lot of buzz at the moment about the imminent Ockenden report. There's already been one report released back in 2020. We got Donna Ockenden, who chaired the independent review at Shrewsbury and Telford. She prepared the report following complaints about maternity services and the safety of it. Obviously, the second report is due on this day of recording, and can you describe what she was really looking at, why she was looking at certain things, and just really to summarise the key points of the report, and whether in your view and your colleagues' view you think those findings are accurate based on what you see day in, day out?
Well, back in 2017, Jeremy Hunt commissioned Ockenden to do the first report, and this was in response to two tragic losses. There was Kate Stanton Davis and Pippa Griffiths, whose parents got together and wrote to him and said, look, we need to do something about this. And so initially he commissioned an inquiry into just 23 cases. Very quickly, it became apparent that there were very, very many more, in fact, 1,800, perhaps even more than that. So they had to change the initial terms of reference to look at 250 cases. So when the parents got together, they found 23, and they very quickly found 250, and then it escalated to nearly 2,000. So rather than wait, because it will take ages to do all those cases, they thought, we'll do a preliminary report on the first 250, and hence in December 2020, the first interim report came out, and it identified many of the issues we've been speaking of, and it said to Telford, Shrewsbury and Telford, you must do this and that, and also all maternity units across England it was designed for. There were local actions for learning and also immediate and essential actions. So they have all largely been implemented, and we await the next recommendations from the second report. They go along the lines of the things we've been speaking out about. Just a couple of highlights. Every hospital must have a lead clinician, both midwifery and obstetric, in CTG or fetal monitoring. So almost all maternity units have that. There's a great emphasis on having risk assessment for mothers before and during labour to try and identify problems as they arise. There's a great emphasis on doing multidisciplinary ward rounds and so on. There are lots of recommendations, and many of them have already been implemented. So it remains to be seen what additional measures Ockenden has suggested.
And are these things, are you seeing this roll out nationally? So not just confined to Shrewsbury and Telford, but nationally?
Very much so. So we have appointed new consultants because it has actually come with some money. So that is a good thing, obviously. It's sad it has to come as a result of so many deaths and tragedies. But nonetheless, it will help to have been all these things come with money, and they have already been implemented. So I'm hopeful that it will make a difference. It's too early to tell.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because it's meant to come with 95 million, and with a lot of that money being put towards increasing the number of midwives, increasing the number of obstetricians. But earlier on, you were saying that those numbers are still very, very low. So there's still a long way to go by the sounds of it. There
is. Of course, things have been slightly distorted in the pandemic. So we've had a double whammy, really. Our hospital has been put on its knees because people have been going off sick. So hopefully that will resolve itself. But overall, we welcome the increased numbers of staffing and hope we can all work together to improve matters.
How can we in the UK increase the staffing levels? Is there something that perhaps the government could do that might encourage people to come into this profession, now and into the future?
I don't think it needs any encouragement. The number of people wanting to do medicine has never been higher. And similarly, midwifery, I think that one of the good things or positive things from the NHS point of view of the pandemic is so many people think, gosh, I'd quite like to be working on the front line as well. But we just need to direct some of them into maternity care. So it's very easy to get into a vicious spiral. The moment you have reduced staff, people start going off on sick leave due to stress, so you get even shorter staff and so on and so forth. You'll know it in any discipline, or I'm sure it happens in legal firms as well. You end up doing too much work, people go off sick and the whole situation gets out of control. So we've got to get on top of it. We've got to put people in and support them, because it is a stressful subject. I regard delivery suite as being like a trauma unit for mothers. Sometimes it can seem like a battleground, and we need to support staff so that they don't get burnt or suffer from burnout in this high stress situation, so that they can carry on and for many years and bring the benefits of their experience to mothers and babies.
Excellent. And just finally, if I may, we've spoken a lot, and anyone watching this might feel a bit disheartened by everything that we're facing at the moment. But what reassurance can you give for expectant mothers or people undergoing IVF that want to become mothers, that will obviously be giving birth in any of these trusts nationally in the next few weeks, months, years?
I think it's quite a good time to give birth now because of all these, for all the attention that it has now achieved. I think also that never before has there been the drive to listen to mothers more. So one thing I didn't mention in how could things improve is is to welcome, encourage, the mother's views, so that they can tell you about their problem and not dismiss them as being trivial. So that has never before has it been as emphasized. So I think there'll hopefully be more staff. There will be a greater emphasis on maternity safety, and there'll be a greater keenness to listen to mothers and their partners.
I think that sounds very, very hopeful for the future, and obviously for us, hopefully we will see that converting into a lower caseload of babies who have been injured at birth over the next years and hopefully decades. Kim, I just wanted to say thanks to Mr. Taylor for joining us today. It's been incredibly informative, and I look forward to speaking to you again about this at a later date.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much.